Okay, can you hear that? I don't know if it's coming through. The sound of the rain against the roof just on the other side of this attic ceiling is pitter-pattering to me on this Sunday afternoon. And you are here. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. Where are you when you're listening to this? What's going on in this moment in your world as you listen? Regardless, I am glad that you're here. If you're new, welcome. Everybody else, what's up? How are we doing? I don't know about you. I had a really challenging week. Someone told me there's like this crazy super moon that's really like destructive and hard, and a lot of people are feeling that. I don't know if anybody else listening to this felt it, but I did. I had quite a week. Ups and downs. And apparently we're supposed to be in this moon experience for like the next 6 weeks or something like that. So, it's going to be a long haul kind of situation as far as I can tell. And I don't even really want to get into some of the stuff that was dogging me this week. One of the things is that I just have pain issues. Some of you know I've had chronic pain issues in my life, and it rears itself from time to time for one reason or another. And last week, I re-aggravated like an old back thing. And then I kind of tended to it just enough to get right again, and then just jump back into my usual stuff thinking it would be fine. And then I re-aggravated it much, much worse at the beginning of this week, which made it impossible for me to do that. And I actually did have to take serious time to just stop doing stuff and tune out. Just tune stuff out. It's like the hardest thing to do. There's so much coming at me. To just tune it out for a time. So I did okay over the last few days. And I'm feeling much better. It is right here at the end of the week here. This is scheduled to go out on the public feed in like 12 hours. And I don't usually wait that long. I think I said the same thing last week, but I've really put it off to the end here because I just didn't want to deal. I didn't want to have to listen to the sound of my own voice, and I didn't want to have to think or talk. But I've managed to get myself to it now because I just spent the last 24 hours really on dad duty. My daughter had 2 friends over. We had a sleepover last night. It's like the first sleepover we've had at our house in a year and a half. And this was my eldest daughter's best friend. Some of you know I've talked about her. She was in our pod and then out of the pod. And, well, the pods have opened up. People have gotten vaccinated, and so we had a sleepover last night, and it was fun for them. And I went to the supermarket yesterday, and those of you who are around remember the King Hawaiian bread situation. Well, they didn't have it. It's like the King Hawaiian bread disappeared. The mystical King Hawaiian bread that showed up for that one occasion was now gone. They don't have it at the supermarket. But what they did have was some really nice challah bread. So I got 2 big loaves of some really nice challah bread, and I hooked them up this morning. Challah bread French toast. And I won some major dad points because it came out really good. I've made some challah French toast in my day, but today's batch was fire. I mean, some good challah French toast. The kids even gave me like an ovation. They like a round of applause for how good the French toast was. So, I got that going for me. I got the Good Dad Award for the French toast this morning. And now they all left. The parents of the kids who were here, they were a brother and sister, they were here. And then they took them over to their backyard. They've got like a play thing in their backyard. So I don't know what they're doing in the backyard. It's raining, but whatever. They left. So now the kids are gone. And I actually have a moment here. And the rain is falling. And at other times, I might be concerned about that. I might be like, oh no, it's messing up the recording. But right now, I'm like, bring it. Let the rain fall. Let the rain fall. And that is very much in line with today's conversation with Divya Kohli. And Divya and I have exchanged some emails over the years. We were in touch some while back, like a year or two ago, maybe first, and then more recently. And I've been reaching out, as you know, to listeners of the show and just fellow teachers out there that I know of who I feel like I can connect to on things. And I didn't really know Divya outside of the email exchanges, but I just had a gut feeling. I had a gut feeling we would be able to talk. And you know what? That gut feeling was correct. We share in a writing practice. She's got a book out called Finding Peace in Difficult Times. We talk about it some today. And I very much enjoyed connecting with her, and I'm very glad to be sharing it with you today. Real quick before we get to that, let me mention that this episode is brought to you in support by Podcast Premium subscribers. People like Katerina Adolf and Prabha Sinha. What's up, Prabha? If you're listening to this right now, we got to get together. It's been too long. I'm so grateful to people like Prabha and Katerina and all the people who are Podcast Premium subscribers. It's really the way to support this show. It's one of the things that really enables us to keep doing what we're doing here. If you're someone who's been listening on a regular and you want to have access to the full archives and be a direct supporter of the show, you can become a Podcast Premium subscriber to do that. It's choose your rate. You can cancel at any time. If there's some of those archived episodes that you really were hoping to listen to and you've got no money, just email us. We will give you a free account. But if you are able to give a little something, it's making a huge difference, and we're very grateful. You can find out about becoming a Podcast Premium subscriber, along with all of my stuff, my live stream classes, the Teacher's Call, the online workshop, Gentle is the New Advanced. All of my stuff can be found at jbrownyoga.com. Okay, y'all. Like I said, I'm a little up against the wire here. I will touch base with you on the other side. But let's go ahead and get to it. Let's listen to this conversation that I had with Divya Kohli. Hello?
Hello, Jay.
Hello. Is it Divya?
Perfect. Yes.
Good to meet you, Divya. Good to speak with you today.
Oh, I'm really grateful for this. I'm a long-time listener. I'm a fan. So this feels a little strange, but I'm also really, really happy to get this chance to chat with you. So thank you. Thanks for asking me.
No, you're welcome. I have memories. We've exchanged emails longer in the past. I know we exchanged some emails recently, but I recall other things that you wrote in the past. I have a memory of you writing something about going to a workshop about, what was it? Yoga for people of color or yoga of color workshop. I remember you wrote that some while back, if I remember.
Yeah, that seems to have got some attention, and it's quite interesting. I'm not the best at analyzing where my blogs or web traffic is going to, or what all the analytics. But the other day, a report came up of what words are people looking up when they find me, or what are the links and what have you. and a graph appears, and it's pretty flat. And then there's a huge spike, and you click on the point of the spike, and it was the blog that you're referring to. What was it? Yeah, I can't remember the exact title, but yes, it was.
I have it here. I believe it's called Yogis. No, I don't know what the number of the thing was, but the title of the workshop was Yogis of Color. And I think I know why it probably got so much attention, because it had just a bit of a kind of counter narrative to that story about inclusivity or whatever.
Yeah, that's me, counter narrative.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to jump right into that to start. We just got here. But I think that I remember you from that. And then more recently, we've been in touch just because I've been sort of reaching out and wanting to hear from people in terms of how they're managing through this pandemic and where they are. And you've been writing about that. So I'm glad for us to connect and just, compare notes.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I love that. I love comparing notes with yoga teachers, and especially, you write, and I remember once you saying in a podcast to somebody, I'm not a journalist, but, and as a former journalist, I think you are. I think you're brilliant. I think you always, you ask the questions while I'm listening that, I'm thinking and hoping someone would ask, and, sort of, well, why is that? And actually, why did you stay there? And all of that sort of thing. And so I love it. And I should be terrified, actually, because you're very good at interrogating, but
No interrogation. Well, I appreciate you saying that. I make that comment about not being a journalist because I'm not trained or anything. Yeah. And I do think that there is training around journalism, and there's certain things that I'm not doing that I think journalists might be doing. But it's interesting to hear you say that, because I noticed that you did have a career in journalism. Are you still doing that work, or have you parted ways from it completely? I saw somewhat recently you still were doing some of that work.
Oh, so I don't believe that we kind of have former lives and then new lives and what have you. And the journalism kind of feeds into my yoga, but, living on this earthly realm, that was many moons ago. So when I left university, and I went into journalism, and I did have, some formal training in that print journalism. These were the days before things had gone digital. So it was a very different world. And certainly my interest was more kind of investigative and, inquiry. So you're getting a hint now of the link. But, and for about 10 years, I worked as a news journalist, both sort of national, local news, politics, the whole mix. And, just as I left that career, things were turning, were on the cusp. In fact, the paper that I was working on at the time, they were going to be the first national UK paper to go digital. You will have heard of them now. And I wonder, it's interesting what you say about, needing that training. And I think training in anything, that you want to do is important. But it seems nowadays there's a bit more of a free-for-all going on. They call it citizen journalism through social media and what have you. And I think just in general, whether you're in yoga or journalism, there seems to be this trend of, you can be what you want to be. And there's more routes than one nowadays to entering a profession or calling yourself this or that. I quite like, I'm still a sort of advocate of, nuts and bolts and graft and all of that sort of thing, whatever you choose to do, and get a bit of discipline in that as well. And then, find your own. But the journalism's there. And I write my monthly blog, or try to, and written the book, which you know about. And how does the journalism still play? I think I've still just got that way of, like many of us have, just asking the questions, and I apply that as much to the yoga as anything else. And
I have mixed feelings about the journalism because on some level, I do think, I had Daniel Simpson on not so long ago, and he worked at the New York Times during the Iraq War and became utterly disenchanted and left that profession to study yogic texts. So, I do think, to me right now, when I look at the sources that I get, like the journalists I respect most, like Glenn Greenwald or Matt Taibbi, or these folks who are actually having to kind of operate outside some of whatever the mainstream journalistic avenues.
Yeah.
It does feel like some of those mainstream avenues are really problematic at this, just to be as diplomatic as I can. And a lot of times I feel like I actually get more accurate and better news from alternative sources. And sometimes these folks are not trained journalists. They're just people spouting off. And you have to take it with a grain of salt because they don't have to go through the same editorial boards or whatever. But sometimes I think that's better, maybe. That's the problem. Those editorial boards sometimes are not just fact checking, but also processing the news in a way that we don't really get the news.
I agree with every point of that. And I think more than ever, the onus is on us to do a lot more of the deciphering and discernment. I remember the days I would just get up, the paper came through the door, and I would sit and read it, and then I'm done. Now, of course, we've got information coming at us wherever and whenever, all the time. And as you've said, different sources. I think that, the onus is on the individual more than ever. Again, applies to yoga, doesn't it? To not just take what we're given, to try and get what we are exposed to from different sources. And that's a real kind of mind, that requires a lot of discipline and motivation to do that as well, to not just rely on what you know or what you feel comfortable with. We all know that. I wonder if, you can do that in isolation, but it's good, to bring that up and to bring that into the, conversation.
Well, I would add to it that, I also am very conscious of the fact that the sources I'm getting are just people spouting off, I don't give authority to people who, don't have expertise in certain things. I'm all in favor of listening to people who know more than me about something and trusting in their judgment. It's just so hard. It is very hard to discern because sometimes there's lots of people who have expertise saying different things, and it's just very difficult to know who to trust sometimes.
Yeah, don't we know it? Don't we know it in the current climate of, the C word? That's COVID, by the way. But and it's not always, more than not always the majority, is it? They're the minority or the quieter voices that might actually have more, more to what they're saying. And then, so, I think, sifting through anything that we think either is for our information or education or entertainment or our well-being, it's a double-edged sort of place I think we're in now, because there's so much available and more choice, and in a way it's kind of more democratic, that you're not, it's not just this is who I am and this is how I think, and this is where I get my information from, and that's your life. There's a lot more movement. And I think, the flexibility, and also not only in what information you receive, but allowing ourselves the flexibility to change our perspective as well, as a two-way flow. And that's tricky too.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it does come down to me just being honest about what I know and what I don't know. And also just always being able to be wrong. Like that seems to me to be the key to not holding a dogmatic view. I believe it's a smart thing to take a position, like to take a view and sort of hold it and defend it if need be, but to always be open to the possibility that I could be wrong and to listen. And then if you are wrong, you admit it. And then that seems to me to be a comfortable place for me to operate from.
Wonderful. I'm glad it is. And please keep going. And we need more people like you, like speaking out on that, because we know that the current times we're in, and who knows if this is just how it's going to be, but to have the space and permission to do that and not be shamed or, pinned to something you thought or said once, and then that's now who you are. That's not a clever way of living our lives and relating to people. So we need to give, and that kind of relates to the blog that you mentioned, which was, for anyone listening, it was just about my experience of going to it wasn't a workshop, it was a meeting for yogis of color. And I just wrote a little bit about how I thought about it in the first place, why I went, what happened, and then how I felt afterwards. And I'm not trying to cleverly bring that back in, by the way, Jay.
No.
It is that sort of, it just reminded me of how, shaming and, labeling people, it's restrictive. It doesn't help anyone. And we've got to give space for each other to, as you say, take a view. I love people who take a view and take a point. Not enough yogis do, but also know that in this present moment, with what I know and where I am and what I've heard, this is what I'm going on. But of course, inherently, logically, I'm going to know something different or more as time goes by. And it's a really good reflection of an open mind that you receive and, hear other points or just your own life experience. I think that's one of our biggest teachers, isn't it? So we got to give space for that. It sounds so obvious, I know, but we got to give space for the fact that people evolve and, and we, as well as letting ourselves do that, we've got to let others, what friendship would last if we just, always held someone in, that we knew in our life to that one thing that they did or didn't do. And you'd get nowhere, right? So, friendships evolve that way and keep going that way. And obviously some fall away. And I think, maybe expanding that kind of connection a bit more beyond that area, professionally, and socially, and and in journalism and what have you.
Well, what struck me about your blog, and it rings true even more now, is that there is like so much injustice in the world, and there's racism and white privilege. Like, I think that's all real. I'm not like a denier of all those things. But what I've sort of observed over my time of putting my foot in it enough times is that there seems to be like politics around identities, and this like identity politics, the effect of it is to just divide people. Like to divide people who normally agree, we should be on the same team. But we're divided because of these like politics around identity. And to me, it almost feels like, that expression, like divide and conquer, that like the people who are really in the positions of power, like the entrenched power structures that need to be overturned in order for us to do right by humanity and the planet, they benefit from the identity politics that we're engaging in a lot of the time. And I feel like, to me, I'm really interested in how do we pierce through some of those identity politics and come together around the things that we really should be after. Like in this country, Medicare for all or whatever, like there's things that would help us all,
right?
That we get distracted or obscured from. And I think that your piece, because you are a person of color, you're allowed to say things that I'm not allowed to say or something.
Yeah, which I really don't. Yeah, I'm vocal on that. I want people around me and to feel totally comfortable saying, belief is a strong word, and again, belief is a shifting sand as well. But to say what they think and feel. I mean, it's getting to the stage now where the last refuge of the WhatsApp conversation, where you think you could say something in private, even that now, where you can feel comfortable sort of just raising something, even that now is, apparently dangerous, or, you can get called something or labeled something as something you're just kind of raising, as in conversation. There's so much in what you just said there, Dave. I know there's lots of
to speak specifically to your experience in that workshop, okay? Because that's something you can speak directly to.
Sure. Okay.
What was it about that workshop that was, I believe, intended to empower or raise awareness, to give yoga teachers of color, I suppose, or yogis of color, solidarity to work against injustices against them? I don't know. I wasn't at the workshop. Yeah. What do you think the workshop was about? And why did you write that article, which seemed to, I don't know, raise some questions about it?
Yeah, sure. So I'll try and sort of take myself back to that and my feelings for that. And by the way, I think that was a year or so ago.
Yeah, it was over a year ago. For sure.
This COVID thing has just blurred dates and years, and who knows.
Time's gone extra weird.
Maybe BC, before anyway. And I mentioned that because in the last couple of years, this isn't to sound at all sort of arrogant or presumptuous. It's not that a lot of my views have changed, for example, in the area of identity politics, but certainly there's been a deepening. There's been a deepening of understanding, and I hope more sensitivity.
Yes, that's most certainly true for me. It's a good point to make.
Right.
There's certainly learning about the experience of communities different from me, and having empathy and understanding their plights. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, if I went to that workshop tomorrow, I'm sure things... Anyway, let's go back to that.
So that's a good point. If you were to go to that workshop today, you might have a different reaction.
I doubt it, but...
might. But
yeah, I think, if I went today, and I will go back to the situation to answer your question, whilst I might have pretty similar ideas at how I feel about questions of race, for example, let's just name it, what might be different is I would have a less volatile reaction to what I experienced in the workshop, because that was very new to me. So let's go back to it. There was a lot of anger there, and there was a lot of recrimination being spoken by all of those present. And it felt like it, and obviously this needed to happen. It felt like there were sort of maybe 20, 25 yoga teachers there, different backgrounds. And it was all very angry, accusatory, defiant, shaming of white people, which made me feel exceptionally uncomfortable. And it would do anyway, right? Whatever forum I'm in.
Were there white people there?
No. I mean, but when you ask me that, I mean, complexions.
Right.
Yeah, all complexions. So, I mean, I don't know what white as white, I'm now thinking of the palette of paint at the hardware. So, I mean, you've got all the complexions and all the, so maybe, I'm sure someone would say, yeah, there are white people there, but are you even allowed to say that if someone's, what? You're right.
Yes, I get it. I wondered if it was intended specifically for people of color and.
Yeah, it was, but it wasn't just, say, blacks, or it wasn't just Asians, it wasn't just this, or, it was, I suppose it was for any yoga teacher who I guess would identify themselves as person of color. That's not a phrase that I had ever identified myself with. That's something that's, again, come in the ether. So I'm in my late 40s for anyone listening. And I would say up until a few years ago, that's not a phrase that was in my ether or in my mind or anything that I would relate to.
What is I'm sorry to interrupt, but what is your background? Where were you born? You're in London now, right?
I am, yes. I was born in India, in Delhi, and I have been in the UK since I was very young, since I was 1 or 2 years old. And, sure, there are experiences I can share on that front, but, so at the workshop, it was the kind of, it felt like there was.
You're having to choose your words carefully, aren't you, Divya?
I am.
It's smart of you to do so. But you see, that's what's different. Maybe especially when you're writing blogs, because I write blogs too. And even blog writing, and sometimes you just, I don't know, you let yourself write what you want to write and you let it go. But later on, I look back and I say, I could have found better words for that.
Yeah. And, again, that's an evolving process, how we express ourselves. And, not everyone is going to have sort of immediate mental access to phrasing things well and, but the ways that protect themselves. And we've got to be careful that people's choice of words doesn't necessarily reflect their heart or intention. It's important. But yeah, I was very uncomfortable there. And I was obviously in this weird position where I am, to use the phrase, a person of color, although again, I never refer to myself like that. But I felt very much an outsider completely. We were sitting in a circle and I felt like I was kind of but just sort of outside of my own body, watching what was going on and hearing what was going on. My nervous system was quite rattled. And during hearing, so teachers were in the circle sharing their experiences of how they felt being a yoga teacher of color had either, that they were being either directly victimized or, had experienced prejudice in the industry or whatever their feeling or, contention was, which is good that they had this space to express that. And I did recognize that at the time. I felt like, wow, it was almost like a pressure cooker and the lid had been taken off. And it was sort of 2.5 hours of that, 3 hours of that. So we all know that, suppressing what you feel doesn't help. So perhaps having these spaces for that to just blow off is good, right? Is important. But I think what you just said a few moments ago, it felt very divisive, very them and us, or us and them, whichever way you want to look at it. And I have other sort of viewpoints, which, I do need to be careful on how I express them. But let's see if I can put this in a way that is true to what I think, because that's the nature of these conversations you have, Jay, but also hopefully is not intended to undermine anything anyone feels. And that is, not questioning where these accusations or prejudices come from. But I'm going to bring up mindfulness here. Sorry, but there's kind of the kind of pause of there might be other factors going on, or not immediate kind of amygdala trigger reactivity. I think that there's other sort of context and that sort of thing. So there's a number of things. Yeah.
Well, I would jump in to say I totally can understand and respect and support people's right to be totally angry and pissed off and yell at me and say, fuck you, Jay. I think they have every right to feel that way and to say that to me, I'm trying to say, okay, is there more than that too? Because it seems to me the way that we're going to address all this stuff is going to want to have people like me who do have white privilege, who agree and think it's wrong and want to leverage whatever privilege they have to help the cause. Like, it seems to me we need all of the people on the planet to come together. And I understand that, you know, my biases and my experience limits my ability to understand other people's experience. And I might say things that are offensive or whatever. I don't know. Sometimes I do things that have hurt people in other communities because I don't understand where they come from. But as someone who really is very passionate about yoga and embracing that and embodying that, I am totally open, as I said earlier, to being totally wrong. And I believe in the interconnectedness of all things in people. Mm-hmm. And I would like to be on the side of justice and humanity. So I'm like, in my mind, there's no reason why we can't come together. That's what I feel like. And so what keeps us apart sometimes feels like distractions more than fighting the injustice.
Yeah. And I mean, Jay, you're one of the good guys. You're like,
well, you have to be careful when you say that. They get mad when you say that.
Well, I'm going to say it. Yeah. That's what I feel. Okay. And I mean, to how, you know, eloquently and open-heartedly what you've just shared, you know, that I think that warrants a respect and a kind of at least a nod rather than shouting back at that. Because, well, not only because that's just a better way to live and relate to each other, but, you know, perhaps, you know, save the grief and the finger pointing to those who actually are, as you say, you know, leveraging the power for either self-gain or
profit over people, essentially.
Right. Or just blatant ignorance. You know, I live in a country which is still it's breaking down, but you know, the class system is prevalent, and the issue around identity politics and race is really I mean, it's always been there and always will be, but that's kind of been ignited from what's been going on in your land in the States. But you know, we've always contended with class being divisive and, you know, affecting how people get on in life, and you know, that can actually play into the favor of those who have that privilege, because, as you say, it distracts to maybe look at other things, or call out something such as, you know, racial difference when actually there might be other factors either equally or even more so at play, you know, as to what's going on. I mean, I was listening to a debate yesterday, and it was a very good conversation between a woman based in London, very successful lawyer, a black lady, and she was talking about the law profession and race and that sort of thing. And she said, well, you know, why is no one kicking up a fuss about the nepotism that still kind of runs the show, you know, in the higher echelons of the legal system, and, you know, other factors, and, you know, even things like attractiveness, you know, the gender one we know about. Now that isn't in any way to sort of water down or undermine anything to do with how someone feels about their race or how that might be being used against them. But, you know, life is a myriad of things going on in any given moment, and it doesn't always, you know, yeah. And
yes,
I think
a myriad of things going on at any given moment is the right way to say it. And that maybe is a little bit of a good transition. I actually don't want us to try to solve race relations or identity politics, because I don't think we can. Mm-hmm. But I like what we've said about it, because I do think it's something that's brought us together. Like, it's something that we share in terms of a viewpoint. And again, I think you've said it a number of times, and I just want to say it again to make it clear. And it's almost crappy that I feel like compelled to make it so clear, but I do want to, is that from what I know of you, I think we agree that we do want to see justice for people in marginalized communities.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it just feels like, I don't know, maybe it's shit that happens on social media, or just the way that it seems like sometimes the pursuit for those things or the movement for those things is happening feels counterproductive, because it feels like it pushes me away. And I agree, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
You know, yeah. I'm on your side and I feel pushed away. And then I can only imagine for people who are not so on the side of justice, it's pushing them way far away. It's radicalizing people in different directions. And that seems to me the problem. How do we tone it down and ease the radicalization? Because if we can't, then we're really not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, there's that, absolutely, what you've just shared, but there's also losing interest. So we're in different lands, and which is very interesting, you know, that we share same issues between our countries, but also there's different underlying ways of reaction. And what I've noticed is a bit of a turning off from the issue. You know, it's like, it's either too much.
Right.
For someone to handle, or they're scared to get involved, or, they feel that, well, their view will either be considered this or that. So, you know, I'll just leave it all together. And I think that was, again, what I came away from the workshop thinking was, well, where's this going to get us? And hey, look, I'm no Mother Teresa or anything, but, I could well have in that workshop brought up things that I have experienced. But this is purely for me personally, right? I didn't see where that would get me. And so I'm interested in, you know, how I live more at peace now, rather than making, you know, life more difficult. But also the bit about not being Mother Teresa is I'm kind of more interested not in kind of solving my wounds or, you know, getting any sort of recompense for anything I've been through. I'm kind of more interested in, you know, where we go now, you know, but I'm very aware, and this is what friends have said to me, that we can't do that bit, the moving on bit, till we've kind of got this bit going on. So that's another perspective. It isn't one I share, and I should be allowed to not share that, but I totally respect that I'm, you know, I don't know, you know, what the way forward is, but it isn't where I come at it from.
I don't see why they can't both happen. Like why we can't reconcile past and move forward. I think I understand they say you have to do one before you can do the other. And that certainly does make sense to me too. But I hear you. And I think that, you know, I was looking through some of your previous blogs, and you wrote something about insecurity versus uncertainty. And you just said something about people turning off and being overwhelmed. And that has absolutely been what I've observed among people in my immediate life too. People just we're just exhausted. People are completely exhausted. It's not like life hasn't always been uncertain, but with everything that's happened with the pandemic and these sort of like... If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.